Hey everyone, it's Nick, and today I'm going to review the sitcom Married with Children from 1987. It ran from 1987 until 1997 for 11 seasons. Let's see, I'll start with the overall premise. The antidote to the increasingly saccharine sitcoms of the 80s, like The Cosby Show, Married with Children focuses on Al Bundy. Bundy is a former high school football star turned hard luck shoe salesman and the adventures of his family as they go through the highs and lows of life. And this is certainly one of my favorite sitcoms. Up there with like shows like The Simpsons, Frasier. It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, which I did a review on Frasier. I'm going to eventually review The Simpsons and It's Always Sunny, Seinfeld, to name some. But anyway, this show is so funny. I'm actually subscribed to, they have a Married with Children channel. They do release clips here and there. And I generally, if I'm in kind of a mood, these shows, I watch them, they generally get me out of the mood. I mean, they make me laugh and cheer me up. So, anyway, I'll start with, I've already gone over Al. Al is basically, when he was growing up, he, at one point in his life, he was a high school football star, and he actually scored, which he brags about quite a bit in the show. He scored 4 touchdowns in one game. And then he got married to a woman named Peggy, who's a lazy cat. As they said in the show before, she's a beehive-headed, couch-butted, chocolate-snarfing parasite. She, throughout the show, she's never really shown doing any particular work. She just sits on the couch all day watching like shows like Oprah and Phil and spending Al's money on the Home Shopping Network. Often buying comical amounts of stuff that she never, like junk basically, that she doesn't even need, just out of impulse. And then you have Kelly, the eldest daughter of the show. She's basically, she's kind of a living embodiment of those dumb blonde jokes, like like the one, blondes are so dumb, if you put a scratch and sniff sticker on the bottom of a pool, they would actually go down there and scratch and sniff it. And then she's, promiscuous, she's always always dating all these boys, and, Al's basically, he gets upset whenever she brings men to the house. Although he never gets upset when Bud brings girls, but he rarely ever does. Oh yeah, that's another thing. Bud is the younger son. He's actually shown as being capable of being pretty smart, but, he often gives in to his basal desires, his desire for sex. And it clouds his judgment, and he ends up making all these bad decisions, like there are times where Kelly's getting a part for the show, and then these women seduce him, and he ends up, trying to help them out, even though they just basically are just using him. And then there are episodes, like he went to a college. He went to college, and he, I can't remember the exact circumstances, for absurd mix-up, they didn't have any more male dorms, so they ended up putting him in the female dorm. And he has a room, on the other side of the room, there's a a shower room. And he drove some holes in the wall, to get a view, and Al, knows that's low, son, that's what he says. But, it's like, he has kind of a bashful look in his face now. It's too low, son. You'll be seeing kneecaps. Raise it up. And then, let's see, the dog is named Buck Bundy. Well, there are 2 dogs. First is Buck Bundy for most of the series. An old English sheepdog. And they often, the show kind of has a thing, where they don't show him talking or his mouth moving or anything, but they have like a voiceover of the thoughts he's having, and his thoughts tend to be that he really hates the Bundys, and even at times wishing they would just die, like the whole neighborhood wishes, particularly Al, would die. and then he was on the show up until I think season 9, and then the dog who played him died, and then they recast him. Well, later on in the series, he becomes reincarnated as a Cocker Spaniel named Lucky, which is in the ironic term. He's not really lucky. And then, he was on the dog. Lucky was on the show until he was on the show up until the show ended. Let's see. Then you have the neighbors. You have initially Marcy Rhodes. She's the initially in the show she's kind of a demure, wealthy woman who married to a man named Stephen Rhodes, and then the Bundys end up corrupting both of them, particularly Marcy, and after a while she starts to become as outrageous as they are, even going as far as making her life's goal pretty much is to make Al miserable. And she comes over, there are times, one episode I saw recently is the one where Al is on a team, he's playing baseball, Marcy's the umpire. She comes in saying, "You stink!" She does kind of this cackle laugh, whenever Al's miserable. And then there's another episode where Al ends up getting circumcised because of, mix up with the surgeons. He was supposed to get a circular incision on his back, and because, they messed up the instructions, they gave him a circumcision, and Peggy was talking to phone with Marcy about it, and the doctor was over there came over to tell Peggy the news, and Marcy's all, it's one of the funniest moments I've ever seen on the show. So anyway, her first husband's name is Steve, and he's kind of this initially an uptight yuppie. He works at the bank along with Marcy, and over time he starts to become disillusioned with both Marcy and the quest for money and material goods. And then when he leaves on the show, he kind of almost becomes like I'll get to in a minute. Another character ends up replacing him. His name Jefferson. He ends up becoming, or hinting that he's heading that direction. Anyway, basically Steve was sick of working and he wanted us to goof off and go to the zoo and all. We didn't want to deal with going to the bank. It's he found it boring, and it's actually a really funny episode. One of my favorites is the zoo episode, where Steve, instead of looking for a job, he goes out with the Bundys to the zoo. Peggy, Kelly, and Bud. He goes to the zoo with them, and he keeps trying. Well, initially he tries to hide it from Marcy and pretending like he's looking for a job. He runs outside when Marcy comes over. He went outside to change in the suit to pretend like he was looking for a job. And then Kelly blew his cover, because kind of the idiot that she is. She mentions about the train ride at the zoo. And, Steve says to Marcy, I can't go on keeping secrets from you. I didn't really look for a job. I was out at the zoo all day. And she says to him, "Well, Steve, when we're in bed, don't look for anything there either." Oh yeah, and also I have to mention Marcy's a sex addict. Particularly with Jefferson, always doing these weird role playing things. Like one of them is Little Bo Peep and the Cop, and let's see they role play these. Like there's one where in the later episodes they pretend to be Al and Peggy to get a rise. To spice up their sex lives. They do all these things, and they're running out of ideas. And Marcy ends up stumbling upon one of Peggy's bras, and she said, "I want to do something different. Something trashy," and holding up her bra, and cheap. And so they both pretend to be Al and Peggy, and they end up having a lot of fun, doing it. And then go around season 5, Steve. Well, it's because the actor who's playing Steve, David Garrison, left the show to pursue a stage career. But he left the show on good terms. So they wrote him off the show as basically just being tired of the lifestyle that he was living with Marcy. He wanted to leave her. And Marcy goes through all these different men that she's dating, basically just trying to use her. They're not interested in her, they're interested in her money. She eventually marries a man named Jefferson Darcy. Initially, she finds out her last name. She didn't even know she got married, and they were both drunk at a party, an office party. And well, anyway, yeah, she finds out she doesn't even know his name, and she said, "Dear, what's your name?" "Darcy." "Oh my God, I'm Marcy Darcy. I should start wearing a dress with polka dots on it." Has a cartoon character's name. And Jefferson's basically, if there's a male equivalent to Peggy, it would be him. He's basically Marcy's pretty boy, freeloading gigolo husband. He just basically married her for money. He just uses Marcy to, basically the only thing she really has on him is that she has money. Otherwise, he'd probably just leave her. And I think Marcy knows it, but Marcy, when Steve left her, she couldn't handle being alone. So basically, she just puts up with it because otherwise she'd be alone. She couldn't handle it. And well, Steve, he was pretty uptight. He didn't really, he was kind of a foil to Alan's schemes. But Jefferson was perfectly in tune with the scheme, so that he and Al get into all these different get-rich-quick schemes. They end up failing, of course, mostly because Al's, he's just a luckless shoe salesman, which they mentioned in the show. He's got kind of a curse. He ends up he's got this curse on him that he can never really succeed in life. They get all these wacky schemes. Like one of them is Al found these. He put them years ago and he buried them in the shoe store wall, and Jefferson accidentally fell into where Al had hit a bunch of shoes. Jefferson said to that, "Shoes? What kind of numbskull would hide shoes in a shoe store?" And Al said, "Me. I didn't like doing inventory in the 70s either. There were all these shoes in the 70s, so Jefferson tells him, Al, do you know what's going on in the world? Look at me, Jefferson. Do I look like I know what's going on in the world?" Jefferson said, 70s style is popular right now. These shoes are worth a lot of money. So they end up selling these shoes for, normally they're $20 shoes. It's like the shoe store Al works at like a Payless, basically. They sell really cheap, defective, cheap, poorly made shoes. And they decide to concoct a scheme so they can make a bunch of money off the 70s trend that was going on in the 90s. So they do it, and then, well, they end up running out of shoes, and they have to hire an anonymous shoemaker. And at one point, a model comes in the store, they're willing to give her the shoes for free as long as she dropped the name of their shoe store for publicity on the runway shoot she was doing. And the heel breaks, and the whole scheme goes bust. And there are several other schemes like that. Oh yeah, speaking of the shoe store, I can't forget about that. Probably some of my favorite bits in sitcoms, particularly this show, is the bits where Al's working at the shoe store and he has all these obnoxious fat women come in. Part of his curse, he pretty much only able to shoe the large and ungrateful. So, right from the first episode, even one of the fat women that's in the store, she appeared a few times. There's some that appeared several times, and she was upset basically out. She couldn't admit to what size her shoe was. A lot of these women on the show, they don't like to admit what size they are, even though the shoes Al's trying to force on their feet don't fit. I can't remember exactly all the detail, but she says to him, "Well, you're very fresh," and he said to her, "Ma'am, I'm anything but fresh. If I were fresh, I'd be easing your feet into the box." And then she says her son's there with her, and Al's upset. Got upset at him because he keeps banging around the $100 pair of pumps. She said to him, "Come on, Arnold, we're leaving." And he says, "But Mommy, I want a balloon." Al says, Al says in response, "You've already got one." A lot of these ones are so funny. And then there's another one. Well, that was the first episode, one of the later episodes, called Twisted, the Twister episode. One of these fat women that Al was putting shoes on, she couldn't get another one that couldn't admit to what size she was, and Al was having trouble getting shoes on her feet. At one point he sprayed WD-40 on her feet to kind of help to ease them into a pair of pumps. At one point Al put a shoe on there that was a little bit too big. She said, "These shoes are too big. I'm swimming in them." Al said to her, "Well, that would explain the life preserver under your dress." And then, Al was trying to get her to leave, because he finds these women to be fat, to be repulsive. And he says, "I'm not leaving until you help me." And then he says to her, "So because you're mad at me, you're going to take on a perfectly innocent chair, a chair that suffered more than enough already." And then, I can't remember what she said afterward, but then Al said to her, "Well, I don't know what I can do that God and Dio Mail couldn't. I'll give it my best shot." And those are some of them. So I'd say the best seasons for the show, at least on my thoughts, my thought or feeling is that the best seasons were seasons 3 to 6. I mean, you can't go wrong if you're going to watch any episodes in the show. Then, I mean, this period is a pretty good one. You can't go wrong. Like there's one in season 4 called Dead Men Don't Do Aerobics, where Peggy, there's a fitness guru named Jim Jupiter, and she's really infatuated by him. Which I actually did a short on my channel. And she wins a contest, and he comes to her house, and she thought he was just gonna basically show off in front of her, like flex his muscles and all. And basically, she was in for a rude awakening, because basically, he's there to whip her into shape. Whoever wins the contest, he would whip him in shape. So she's doing all these exercises, and at one point she puts her foot down and says, "Let me clear up some misconceptions. There are 2 things Peggy Bundy does not do. Number 1, cooking, cleaning, sewing, vacuuming, ironing, parenting. And number 2, exercise." And he says to her, "Peggy Bundy, I can see you're a strong woman, but I'm the healthiest man in Chicago. I can see this week is going to be a test of wills." And then it says on the caption, 6 days later, basically she broke him. He becomes like Peggy, a lazy bonbon chocolate snarfing parasite who's hooked on Oprah. And then he goes on to do a show like usual. Marcy and Peggy are watching, and Marcy comments, "Put on a little weight, didn't he?" Peggy says, "Oh, he's just pumped." Marcy says, "In his chin?" And he starts getting up. He says, "Oh, let's just get that exercise thing over with." He's all winded, out of shape just from getting up. He's smoking a cigarette on the show, and he when he starts up the show, he's sitting on the couch chair like miserable, like with a cigarette in his mouth. He gets up and he starts to do the exercises, and then he just collapses dead, because basically, he wasn't used to eating junk food and being lazy and not doing anything like Peggy does. So he gets up and he does a little bit, and then he ends up croaking over dead. And the 2 women were fighting over these really hot women. I don't know if they're twins or not, but they're these really hot blondes and almost like bikinis or really tight-fitting leotards. They start fighting each other like you're mud wrestling, man. It's so hot. I mean, there are several other parts in the show where they have these really sexy starlets on the show. Anyway, review is going a bit long, but I mean, I've seen the show several times, so it's pretty easy to list my thoughts on it, and list different things about it. But anyway, I also have a playlist on my channel, Married with Children, where I have different clips mostly from the Married with Children YouTube channel. I saved a bunch of clips in there. You can check out the show on there, and then they have it on Hulu. Let's see, I don't know all the services they carry on. I know one is Hulu. I think another is Peacock, named too, and you can get the DVD set. Although DVD set they haven't, it's still pretty much in standard definition, so you're not going to really get a high quality picture on it. So I kind of recommend just doing it on streaming, or they can also record it on TV. I can't remember all the channels that carry it. I think one of them was was it? I think it was Spike, or something like that. They carry, they air reruns of Married with Children. I recommend that too. I don't know if I recommend the DVD set. Although it's not very expensive. I mean, I just personally would just watch it on TV, or get a streaming service rather than buying the set. Oh, and they also have it on iTunes, and you can buy it on game consoles like the PS Store if you're interested. Anyway, I hope you enjoy it. I give the show about a 9 out of 10. I mean, it's, again, one of my favorites. Pretty much this show was responsible, for getting rid of the shows like the Cosby Show, where they're just so saccharine, they have no real edge to them. And then, shows after this, and basically that came about were like Malcolm in the Middle, The Simpsons, Roseanne, It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, Seinfeld. I mean, pretty much may not even have these shows. And Married with Children, didn't pave the way. Oh yeah, another thing about the show is I forgot to mention. The show did have some controversies back when it first aired. Particularly one with this woman named Terry Ricolta kept trying to get the show canceled, and basically it worked out for the show. Basically, her protest basically gave the show more attention. People got interested in checking out, and because of her, the show really took off. I mean, the joke was on her. They sent her flowers every year, basically thanking her because of her protest. That she made the show more popular. So anyway, thankfully the show was able to run for quite a while and inspire other shows like like Seinfeld and Curb Your Enthusiasm. Oh, It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed my review, and check out my other reviews too under show and game reviews, and hope you have a great day.